Hello, I'm Jacob Kruger, and this is the Write Your Screenplay podcast. This week, I have a special guest, Erin Brown Thomas. Erin is one of our newest faculty members, and she's here to talk about how to write an ensemble piece. And it's a really exciting time to be talking to her about this because her ensemble piece, Chasers, just made it into Sundance. So I want to start out, Erin, by just talking about Chasers and where that idea came from and how it evolved into an ensemble piece for you.
Sure, absolutely. The thing that I was grappling with was even with the amount of success that I'd felt in the industry so far, it always felt like I was chasing the next thing. And within that tension, I would ask myself, okay, to what degree am I paying my dues? And to what degree am I chasing abuse? And what I mean by that is that I felt like I was always giving my all to something that didn't fully love me back. When you look at that in the context of a relationship, that's abusive, that's dangerous, it's red flags. But we do it every day in entertainment. I would turn down paid work so that I could spend 50 hours going after an application where only like 5 to 8 people would be selected. Half of them would have been like Nepo babies. And like, I'd hear like just get a generic rejection months later and be like, wow, like to what degree is me chasing this, removing my own agency? And to what degree is it me chasing something that was never mine to begin with? To what degree is that abuse?
Yeah.
And
I'd love to jump in for a second because, Erin's been a working writer, director for years, right? She just had a film accepted into Sundance. And I think it's so valuable to realize it doesn't matter your level of success, right? Like you could be Tom Hanks, right? And there's a degree to which we all go through this in the industry, right? Where we all go through like, hey, am I pursuing this in the healthiest way for me? Should I
yeah,
be pursuing the passion project or should I be doing the thing that everyone's telling me to do? And sometimes it's really hard to know what the answer to that is.
totally. I think one of the core ideas of this script was that ambition or dreaming makes you vulnerable. And I think this is a reason that I do love ensembles because with an ensemble, you get to have so many different wants, so many different desires, so many different points of view. And both having a desire and having a point of view make you vulnerable to exploitation. So it sets up all these opportunities for characters to manipulate each other, for status games to happen, for reversals of power. It keeps things interesting. Once one character says something, oh, these three other characters would have a strong perspective on that. And so I find that, ensembles are such a great way to keep a conversation going around a theme or topic, but also a great way to develop characters. Because, of course, these vulnerabilities, these perspectives, they are more interesting and more inherent of who a character is than the things that just happen to them.
I often look at ensembles like variations on a theme. And what's beautiful about that is that each character in the ensemble can go on a journey in relation to that theme, right? And
Mhm.
especially when that theme is a question, like for example, in the film Magnolia, where he's asking this question about coincidence and things that seem like they should be unbelievable, like frogs falling from the sky,
Yeah.
right? Which apparently is a real thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a biblical reference; it's a real thing that sometimes happens, where animals will get swept up by a storm out of a lake and
Hmm.
dumped back down, right? And so he has this question about the inexplicable,
Hmm.
right? And the coincidences that shape our lives. And we get to see all these different characters go on a journey in relation to that.
You're talking about Magnolia, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And that's exactly what I love about it. It's you can explore an idea that's like deeply, deeply inside of you, and you get to be your own sort of Greek chorus. Well, what about this? What about that? By exploring those different perspectives, the dialogue that goes on inside of your head, sometimes the dialogue that like actually gaslights you, you can just put those different voices into different characters or those different journeys into different characters. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
One of the
agree.
hard things about ensemble pieces is that you have fewer pages, meaning if I'm just telling Erin's story and she's my main character and she's in every frame, and then if I'm telling a feature film, I have, 95 to 105 pages of Erin. But when I'm working on an ensemble, it's actually very different. If I have 5 characters, even if Erin's still my main character, because some ensembles do have a main character, if I have 5 characters, maybe Erin's in 40% of the
Mhm.
pages, right? So she's in 40 pages instead of 100, right? And all those other characters also have to have journeys. So there's a level of efficiency that's required when you're working on an ensemble piece. And I think that begins really from the introduction of your characters. And I'm curious, Erin, like, how do you think about introducing a character in an ensemble piece? And is that different from the way that you would introduce them when you're writing a single main character?
No, it absolutely is. I mean, it's different in some respects and it's the same in others. The ways in which it's the same is that if a character is going to have an arc at all in a screenplay or teleplay, I want it to be really clear that we're staying with them when we first meet them. So part of that is the way they're visually framed when we first meet them. The writer me is suggesting to director me or potentially another director if I'm writing for hire that we're going to frame this in a way that sets us up for caring about this person. But there are other things in the script that make us do that. One, like I said, is having a point of view. So if someone like comes in hot with a hot take on something, I'm sort of immediately, drawn to them. And then in addition to that, you kind of want them to want something and you want to feel like they're taking a step towards that want, whether it's some sort of completion. And it's okay. I think sometimes like a small want and a completion of it still gets you the sense that, okay, this person is active. Like we're actually taking a step forward with them. You want to just feel like momentum pulling you forward with that character. Other times it's like they're coming in very strongly with the thing that they want that they may or may not get by the end of the film or the pilot, etc. That's what's the same. What's different is what you said, like efficiency. With a protagonist-driven story, there are like detours on their journey. You're taking them, as you would say, and write your screenplay through all these different movements, through like 7 different acts, and you're doing that less with. You're not as worried about like red herrings or like or just having as many movements with each character. You're asking yourself what a meaningful arc would be for each character. And for some characters, that's taking one small step forward. And I think of it very much almost like a bell curve, right? Like in the middle of the bell curve at the top, you're going to have your characters that have the most screen time, who you have like the deepest emotional connection to, who they're the ones that are going to make you like probably cry the most if you're doing something where people are crying. And the ones on the edges, they might be the ones that help you laugh. But each character that's closer to the middle, you're going to see them go on a deeper journey or a longer journey. And the characters along the edge, their journey is it could just be a sentence, it could just be a punctuation. They could say just one thing, but they're all contributing, like I said, to the theme. And I really love, this is something I did in Chasers, finding one character to be the foil within the theme. So if your film is exploring something and has a premise that is leaning towards one particular answer to the question you're asking, I think it's really important to have a foil in there. Not only because you want your foil to be a valid perspective, not just the perspective that you're going to disprove, but you also know that your theme will actually pop more if there's a character whose perspective is you're wrong. It will actually allow the audience to feel it, and they'll feel it if you do it well in a really subtle way that feels both like specific but not like hammering you over the head.
Yeah, there's a concept in painting that if you put a complementary color right next to, so like the color that's on the opposite side of the color wheel
Mhm.
next to the color that it makes it pop.
Yes.
And I think this is so true, and it's easy. Writers are terrified of being misunderstood, right? And we have such important things that we want to say, and it is important to say what you want to say, but sometimes we make a mistake of not giving full validity
Mhm.
to the opposing argument, right? And when you weight things in your favor, it actually makes your ideas less convincing, right? Because people who believe otherwise can easily go like, well, what about this?
Mhm.
Right? But when you weight things when I'm writing, I like to think I'm going to weight things against my favor, right? I'm
Mhm.
going to weight things against my argument. Another wonderful Ensemble piece, right? Network, right?
Mm-hmm.
It puts Paddy Chayefsky's belief inside the words of a total madman, right? Who by the end of the piece has literally sold out to the man. He talks to the network CEO who puts him in his place, and he says, "I've seen the face of God," and he becomes a shill for capitalism, right? Which is the exact opposite of what Paddy Chayefsky is trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But by weighting the piece against his beliefs, he makes his beliefs, he tests them, right, to see can they survive the strongest possible argument against them. And it's a really profound thing to see. The other thing that I think is beautiful about that, you talked about in Chasers, that you're really trying to ask yourself a question that you don't fully know the answer to, right? Because, I could frame your story as like a story of total bravery. A woman who has achieved a career that most people dream of and who is choosing to say no to things that would pay her money in order to pursue the big dream. And look, it has this great ending. She does it and she gets into frickin' Sundance, right? I could tell the story that way. But if you don't know the ending.
And I didn't while I was pouring literally everything I had, mind, body, spirit, finances. I didn't know that would happen. And I don't know what's going to happen beyond Sundance. So
yeah, so you could tell the story the opposite way too, right? And so when you allow yourself to realize that as a writer, you don't need the answer. You need to ask the question profoundly, right? And if you have a multiple main character piece, you can ask it through a lot of different characters.
Yes.
You also said something that I think is so valuable. The introduction of your characters is the most important thing, whether you're writing a protagonist-driven story or or an ensemble piece, right? The idea of introducing your characters with a clear want, whether it's a big one or a small one, and with a really strong point of view. And I'm actually thinking, since we were talking about Magnolia, I'm thinking about that introduction of Tom Cruise's character in Magnolia. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little. It's so amazing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny because I was rewatching Magnolia recently and my husband clocked something very funny. And this is, I don't know that this was in the script, but it's just something that I have to point out because I love it. There's this triumphant music behind him and you kind of feel like he's like on this larger than life stage. He's like Taylor Swift in this moment. And there, of course, is going to be a reveal that he's in like a conference room of a hotel, and there's a big crowd, but it's not what you originally thought. But also, if you're paying attention, there's music that just like doesn't finish, which is just very ironic for a character that's all about like seduce and destroy.
And for people who don't remember Magnolia, this is not like the opening of Little Miss Sunshine where you pull back and it's like three people in the room. But it's like the scene is shot. You were talking about how do you frame the main character? The scene is shot almost like the way he imagines.
He sees himself. Yes. Exactly. Like this guy believes that he is God's gift to women and men, right? He's God's gift to women because he is the, highest catch in the land. And he's God's gift to men because he's going to teach them how to do it so that he can make a lot of money.
Yes. And as far as point of view, right, it's literally seduce and destroy.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That is his story. Yeah.
So your point of view is, oh my God, this may be the most toxic man in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Like every lesson that he's teaching is more disturbing. Right. And he is trying to teach men how to pick people up. I think the first like flashcard that he puts up or title card that he puts up is like create a trauma, right?
Yes, create a trauma. And then it cuts to somebody who is literally being told like terrible news.
Yeah. Or maybe is it create a trauma or create a tragedy?
It's create a tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the first title card that comes up is literally like create a tragedy. Right.
Yeah.
So you have this character with this unbelievably toxic point of view. Right. And then they outdo it. Right. And this is one of the really cool things. Once you introduce a character and you have that clear want, he wants to be Tony Robbins. You have that really clear want and you have that really clear point of view. the ultimate example of male toxicity, right? Then every time you meet them, and this is part of the efficiency, right? We don't have time to meander,
Yeah.
right? You're going to be attacking that, and you're going to be what we talk about and write your screenplay, right? Mirroring or foiling. But on the simplest level, like, is the character doing something strongly contrasting, or are they doing something strongly similar that outdoes, right? And so we see him the next time, and he's being interviewed, of course, by a woman.
He's being introduced by a Black woman, and she finds a hole in his story. And it has to do with his upbringing, his parents. And of course, we're also getting some information from another subplot that his father is dying and that they're estranged. But watching that play out, you can see the cracks break underneath him because he has crafted a very specific narrative about himself, and his entire business and personality is propped up on that.
Yes, and I love what you're saying, because that's literally what the structure of the piece does, is it cracks open his constructed vision of himself. And it forces him to deal. He's basically a guy who refuses to talk about the past.
Yeah.
Right? Chapter whatever in his book is like, ignore the past. Right?
Yeah.
And it breaks him down. And by the end, he's had to confront his actual past. Right? And his hatred for his father and his love for his father, and what happens. And he's reduced to tears, and you're reduced to tears for him. Right? This person that you totally judged and totally saw as like pure toxicity, you're moved to this place of understanding.
I think something that you said that it like kind of sparked something for me. How he is very like this character is very, very focused when we meet him. And the screenwriter, P.T. Anderson, he is not attempting to like give him many wants. He's really focused him. So if you are someone who struggles with creating characters that feel like they have too many wants, I think this is why I gravitate to ensembles. Like me in real life, I am, always drawn to like 10 things at once. And so, of course, I tend to write characters when I'm doing something protagonist driven. One of the things that I have to rein myself in is like, okay, make sure that I'm focusing my character. But I also like my taste would lean towards things that are like people would say new. I know it's such an overused word, but like nuance. And I think if you relate to that idea, if you relate to, gosh, but like I want everything. I want my characters to be complex. I want them to like everything. I think ensembles end up being this wonderful tool to create nuance and give you the ability to explore all these different wants through different characters, but let each character feel focused. And because you're thematically exploring something through all these different characters, you actually feel like each character then has nuance, because every character in a way represents every other character, right? Every single character is a human, meaning they are a deep well of universal experiences. And even if you haven't gone on stage and like tried to seduce and destroy women before, you can relate to this idea of curating a brand and like finding just like a certain amount of comfort in what you've created and keeping a wall up between you and your emotions. So that's every character. It's just we're exploring it through this guy and this story.
He's like the purest expression of that thing.
Exactly. So you can explore the purest expression of things that are universal, that of course each of your characters have to a degree inside of them. And that's, I think, why like ensembles really speak to me and why I feel really free as a writer writing them. And I would just say again, if you're someone who finds that one of your struggles is to put like in the name of nuance, putting a lot of wants into your main character, like try an ensemble. It's been really helpful for me.
Yeah. One of the questions I always get about ensembles is like, how do you know when to cut from one thread to another? And I'm wondering if you have any advice about that.
I mean, I think the adage of like, come late, leave early is great. So Chasers is a oneer. It's a 30-minute oneer, and it's a shot.
Can you explain what a oneer is for anybody in the audience who doesn't know?
So the camera starts rolling, like, the movie starts, and we never cut until the end. So it's just a camera moving around, catching things. And I knew I wanted to do this because of the nature of Chasers. I knew I wanted specifically to drop in on little pockets of conversation. And I wanted the camera to be very motivated by the characters we were following. Like, if that character moves this way, the camera moves that way, but we might pick up a conversation and hang there for a second before our character takes us back. Anyway.
Let me just jump in for a second, because I want to just point out how completely insane this is to do on a low budget, right?
Oh, yeah. If you haven't made a movie before, don't do this.
Yes.
If you haven't made 10 movies before, don't do this.
It's insane in a wonderful way, right? That you rarely see oneers. There are really two famous examples, right? Birdman, of course, and then there is an episode of The Bear that's shot as a oneer, right?
Yeah.
But this is one of the most rare. There's a movie called Russian Ark that doesn't really work, that's shot as a oneer.
A rogue, yeah.
But this is one of the most rare things to see in filmmaking, because it's so freaking hard, right? Like as a writer, it's incredibly hard, because you're taking away this power of the cut that we have, right? So talk about needing a level of efficiency to achieve that, right? Your craft needs to be so freaking good. And then as a director, right, there's a level of choreography. You have nowhere to cut to. You don't get to go, okay, we're done this take, now we're going to go over here. You literally have to choreograph all these actors. And then, of course, from an acting perspective, my God, you must have, like, you have to have the most incredible cast to pull something like that off.
Listen, they're amazing. All my cast is amazing. And if you follow me on social media, I'll be tagging them all a whole bunch this year, either Chasers_film or Erin Brown Thomas _film. So definitely shout out to my cast. But yes, I think one of the, like, here's an example of like why efficiency is demanded. So I knew the environment, I knew the house I was going to shoot this in when I wrote it. And I should also say, like, this was my concept, but I co-wrote it with the lead actress who is in it. And I would need to give her a shout out, especially since we're talking about writing here. That's Sierra.
What's her name?
Sierra Croney. She's wonderful. I actually met her at an event in LA, and I was just like, it was just one of those moments where you see someone and you're like, we're going to be working together.
Yeah.
But so we would go to her house, and I'd walk the path of like, okay, I know like a big conversation's happening here, and then like 2 rooms over, a big conversation's happening here. And then so I would like count like how many seconds does it take to get to here. And it's like, okay, so I need to invent a vignette that will pull us through from there to there, and then we'll be done with the like snippet of conversation. So it's a lot of like, also, if y'all have heard the Instagram account Overheard in LA, that was like a really huge inspiration for the tone that we wanted to take with this. Just this idea of like being at a party and like hearing somebody say something, you're like, that's funny. So it's a lot of like, that's funny, that's funny. And we brainstormed like 1,000 that's funnies. And then it was like, which one of these are contributing to questions around this theme in some way? Which of them are, and some of them are very obvious, right? We've got someone who is talking about his toxic boss saying, hey, this is LA, baby, you got to suffer the way to the top. That's why I'm still working for her, right? You know, the old devil wears Prada of it all. But there's another moment where a character is just like, you know, looking at the ingredients inside of a dip, and he's like, rapeseed oil. And this is just coming from the fact that I'm always like, that's such a scary name for a seed oil. But then another character comes in and is like, oh yeah, all seed oils are bad for you, even if they're consensual. And like, it's just like it's like, for me, it's the health nut in me just kind of being like, well, the script is always asking, like, what are the lies we tell ourselves in order to just like keep enduring the things. And one of the things that like we tell ourselves when we eat unhealthy stuff is that it tastes good. And so that was like, that is very like it is related to the core theme, but it's decoration, but you see it's 5 seconds long, so it stays. Had I made something that was a minute long in that regard, people would have been like, I don't know. There was another moment that kind of deals with the same, where someone talks about their vaping flavors, and the other is like, oh yeah, like it's such a cool, I can't remember the exact quote. It's like something like, it's such a cool brand, like for every 10 they sell, they give one to a kid in need or something. And it's just like about a vape. It's obviously not true, but you know, again, it's just like, I feel like we always like make these little concessions in life. And so these were micro examples that were just allowed to be funny.
Yeah.
They're on theme, but they're funny. But then these longer conversations that would go on for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes where the camera would be circling around the same group of people, like they had to be really central to the theme that I was exploring.
How do you know that it's time to leave story A and go to story B? It's time to leave story B and go to story C.
Once I've either expressed a really strong perspective, asked a question, it's similar to beats. It's you reach a completion. You reach a sense that we can't stay in this moment any longer. Like the main character, Sophia, she's gotten the information that she needs to make her next move on Jacob, her crush. She's not going to stick around there. She's got the information now. She's going to move. There has to be something that means we no longer can stay in this beat. It doesn't make sense to. You always talk about how, a beat ends when a character gets what they want, but not what they need, gets what they need, but not what they want, gets what they want and what they need, gets not what they need and not what they want. Or, and this is a real huge thing that can help you in a oneer, there's like a new shiny object. And then like a loud sound or like off screen or someone calling someone or like, oh shoot, I got a text, I got to do this. Like those are things that can be very helpful when you're trying to stay very economic. And again, when you're doing a oneer, at least when you're doing a oneer that's at a party and should feel as frenetic as a party, you don't want the camera to stay put too long. So for me, using like someone yelling at someone, like, there's a moment where someone looks in a bathroom and someone's in the bathroom, they just start yelling at them. And the camera is like just as scared as the character that's running away. So, I think that last thing, number 5, shiny new object or new objective can be very, very helpful in the context of a oneer.
You shared so many wonderful pearls of wisdom there. And there's one that I want to kind of pull out, which is in the writing process, we're about to make, like, when you're building an ensemble piece, you're making a tapestry, right? And it's the most complicated tapestry that you can make, right? If you have 5 main characters, you're actually telling 6 stories, right? You're telling the story of character A, character B, character C, character D, and character E. And then you're telling the story of how they all intersect. And you have fewer pages to do it, of course, because you need to make room for all these characters, and they're not going to all be in scenes with each other. And you're using this theme to tie it all together, right? And sometimes there's this misconception around among new writers that somehow you have to be this master tactician, right, with the perfect plan. Mm-hmm. And yes, by the time your film is done, especially if you're going to shoot it yourself, you should be in that place. But the process is intuitive, right? And if you heard what Erin was saying, right? I'm looking for completions. I'm looking for questions in relation to the theme. I'm looking for movement in relation to the theme. I'm looking for a moment where it feels like it doesn't make sense to sit in this beat anymore. I'm looking for rhythm. I'm looking for, it feels like the character should move right now, or it feels like the camera should move right now. I'm looking for interruptions, right? I'm looking for, how do you create the frenetic pace of a party, right? Which would be different than, for example, if you are shooting a movie like Russian Ark, which, even though it's problematic, which has this very languid pace, right? And so there's some degree when you're building an ensemble piece that you need to trust your intuition, particularly in early drafts. Do you feel yourself being pulled to another story, and which one do you feel like you're being pulled to? Yeah. And then on the craft level, you want to make sure that you're not sitting too long, because you need that efficiency, right? Or you're just not going to make it through the script.
Yeah.
You looked like you had an idea there while I was talking.
I mean, well, I will just say, like, this script. So, I had the idea, I pitched it to Sierra. I said, come on over. And then we, in 2 days, wrote it, which was insane. Like, it just flowed. But we didn't outline it. We had ideas, like we had like brainstormed some ideas ahead of it. We just started writing and we just made up characters as we went. It was just like, who else would have a hot take in this conversation? That's what I love about creating ensembles, right? Someone like says something, well, who else was there? You just start realizing how to create balance using different characters and using I feel like it's so much easier to write from intuition for me with an ensemble than it is with and that's not to say you shouldn't write from intuition with a protagonist driven story. I personally find it very instinctual to write an ensemble, and a lot of it is dancing. Like, it's like literally a rhythm. You're just feeling it. Like, read it out loud as many times. When you have an ensemble, like, just write it in order, especially if it's going to be a oneer, you want to write it in order. And then just like, can just keep reading it out loud. You'll feel it. Like you'll feel the energy. If you feel it drop and imagine it, like walk it out, walk with your characters, imagine what the camera's seeing. Like it was a lot of that visceral experience that brought this thing to life.
Yeah. So we're talking about introduce your character with a strong point of view in relation to the theme.
Mm-hmm.
Introduce your character with a really clear, strong want. Follow your intuition when the character makes some form of movement in relation to the theme or the want. You're going to cut to another thread, feeling that pull of the other threads, feeling the rhythm that you're trying to build. And then there was something else that you pointed out that I want to kind of put a spotlight on.
All right.
Which is like the most important ensemble in your life is the people that you surround yourself with, right? That in a way that we are all in ensemble stories, right? And you are only as good as the people you surround yourself with, right? So, it sounds like, your co-writer, you guys brought things out in each other that made you better writers than you would have been if it was just one of you.
Yeah.
Right?
There was like a friendly camaraderie where it was just like, can we punch it up more? Like it was very like, what about this? Ooh, I like that. But what if? It was very like improv, yes, and energy.
Yeah.
And it's also nice to write something with the person who is like, Sierra is in half the movie. She's got, 40 to 50% of the lines. So I was always able to hear her say it.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't sounding in my head, like a lot of times you write something for an actor and you hope down the line that they say it the way you're thinking. But when you're co-writing with that actor, if it's not sounding right, you could be like, how would you put it? And you can work with them to get it to a place where you like it and it sounds good and it works with them and like how it pops most in the way that they would deliver it, which is just a fun thing. If you have the ability to do that, you don't always, but if you do, it's kind of cool.
For sure. And I think, we can take these same lessons from writing. One of the reasons we're so excited to have Erin on our team is we really wanted to bring in an expert at self-production, especially on the low and micro budget level, right? We have so many students who are desperate, not just to write a script, but to launch a career as a director, as an actor, as a multi-hyphenate writer, director, producer, star. So many actors who come to us because they want to originate a role because they're not getting cast in the roles that showcase their talent, right? And we're so excited to have you, right? Because of that vast experience you have, not only on the writing level, but on the producing, the directing, the fundraising, the distribution, right? The film festival, like all this kind of stuff. But most movies go wrong when the ensemble is put together wrong. And when I'm saying ensemble, I'm really saying like your DP,
right?
Your director, your producer, your star, right? Your gaffer, right? Your key grip. When you cast people in these production roles who are not right for the role, you vastly lower the chance of your film succeeding. And when you put somebody in the role that's right, you vastly increase it. And you can almost use the same technique and go like, okay, well, what's their point of view?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, right? Because like we were talking earlier about how you can find like nuance and like a full story by having each person have a specialized point of view or thing that they're caring about. And certainly that's the same with a movie. Of course, your DP wants good sound, but that's not what they're focused on.
Yeah. Yes. And so like really understanding what their point of view is, what's the movie they're trying to make? Is it compatible with yours? Right? If it's not, even if they're famous, they might not be the right person, or you might need to be prepared to do a major rewrite so that it can be their art too.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. Yes, because not like you might have a DP who comes in with a really exciting, fun vision that might just bring a different theme out than what you were seeing in the script. So just someone being talented, that's part of the equation, but them really wanting to, as we say, make the same movie you want to make or make the same show you want to make, that's really important. And like I said before, also just that you want to watch for people that are able to really work with others, but own their own territory. And a lot, in indie filmmaking, you have a lot of people who have worn a lot of hats before. And a lot of times you got to ask someone who's normally a director to step in and be an AD. And if they're going to try to backdoor direct in that moment, that's not okay. So again, those specialized perspectives and being united with the vision, those are two things that are really crucial. And it's also just like such a good metaphor for how ensemble stories work.
Yes. And that want, right? Like, does the director actually want to help with lighting, right? Or do they want to backdoor direct, right? And one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got was from a theater director named Sasha Eden in New York, back at the beginning of my days producing and directing theater. And Sasha produced off and off Broadway theater. And she shared with me, this has stayed with me forever. She said, everybody has to get paid, even if they're not getting paid with money, right? And she's like, if you don't know how the person is getting paid, then they're not getting paid, and they're going to destroy your project. And that was the most valuable piece of advice. And of course, it comes back to what you were talking about, like, what do they actually want, right? And sometimes you have to help them say it, right? And you're afraid to do it because you're like, oh my God, they're the most incredible DP. I don't want to lose them, right? And I don't have any money. And you're afraid to go like, hey, how do I pay you?
Yeah.
Right. But if you,
what's your buy-in?
Exactly.
What is the skin you have in the game here? Is it a paycheck, or is it because you believe in this project and you think it's going to go to Sundance? But I can tell you, for my DP on this project, it was the latter, and luckily it paid off for her.
Yeah. But it really helps sometimes, the producer literally, they just want to have dinner with the star.
Yeah, it
right?
could be.
And, and some, or maybe they want to be on the podcast, or maybe that, like, you need to know exactly what they want. And if you can't pay them that, you have to figure out what you can pay them, right? That they're going to be happy with. And so it's the same thing with the character. If with the character, we're going to attack their want, right? Like we were talking about Magnolia, Tom Cruise's character, and all he wants to do is push the past away and have a new way of controlling every interaction with women.
And what's so interesting is, like, you got another character, the quiz kid, who is completely living in the past, and that's another example of like a foil that helps bring this idea of living in the past. Like, you wouldn't have even thought about like living in the past or present as like central to the movie unless you had like both of those examples.
Yeah. So this is the William H. Macy character you're talking about, right?
Yes.
And he was the most brilliant kid ever to play the game show. Right. And he's supposed to be Tom Cruise, right? He's supposed to be famous now. Right. And instead, his life just hasn't turned out.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's like excited to get braces. Like, that's how, he
wants braces because he's in love with
this guy that has braces. But it's fun, and the Paul Thomas Anderson is playing with this idea of him still being a child too, by choosing the bartender the braces, knowing that would inspire William H. Macy. We're again just visually putting him right back into the past.
Yes, and it's so brilliant, right? It's like exactly what you're talking about. It doesn't matter if the want is braces, right, or build a toxic self-help empire, right? It doesn't matter if the one is big or small, as long as it's hard to get.
And motivated by something universal.
Exactly. Motivated. These are those emotional needs we talk about: love, respect, comfort, justice, safety, sex, nourishment, transcendence. You were talking about the characters on the inside and the outside, right? And one of the characters on the outside in Magnolia is the Philip Seymour Hoffman character, right? And he's just a nurse. But he finds out that the dying man that he's taking care of wants to reconnect with his son.
He's gonna make it happen. He's gonna
make it happen, right? And he just goes on a tiny little arc, right? And so that simple idea. What's the movie about? What does each character want? And then getting curious about how those are all going to weave together.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing as you build the ensemble to make your movie, right? What do they want? What's their point of view? How is that all going to tie together?
And you kind of know who needs to be in scenes with each other based on where the conflict's going to come from.
Exactly. Exactly. And we're looking for conflict between wants,
Mm-hmm.
and we're looking for conflict around point of view with theme.
Yep.
Right. And that's why those two ideas that Erin introduced to you are so important. And I think we'd be remiss to talk about ensemble without also talking about, like, not the ensemble that's making your film, but like who's at your table in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We're trying to be artists. And as Erin started to, like, it doesn't matter where you are in your career. You could have just won your Academy Award, right? Or you could be just starting your first script. We're doing something that is hard and terrifying and vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And that we don't know if it's going to pay off. And that means that we need to surround ourselves with an ensemble
Mm-hmm.
that supports us.
Yep.
And, if you're making a lot of room at your table for your needy whatever, right? Or for the person who feeds your doubt, or for the person who's pushing you towards law school, right? Or for the person who just demands that you go out and party every night and gets in the way of your, right? If you're making room for people who don't feed your dream, it's really, really hard to get there. In screenwriting, we want to populate the world with characters that are very challenging for the dream, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to create
Not in real
drama.
life. In real life, you want people that will help you see things who will help you see your dream from different perspectives,
Yeah.
who will help you see different opportunities that you might not have seen, who will criticize you in a way, or maybe criticize is the wrong word, who will offer you feedback that will help you grow, people that are interested in a growth mindset, people who are like, if they're sharing something that's hard to hear, they're sharing it from a place of love and concern, and not like cynicism or jaded from their own lack. They're
Yeah.
sharing from a place of abundance themselves.
Yeah. This is something I've noticed. It's hard for some people to actually know who their friends are, because sometimes it's easier to have friends who just think everything you do is great, right? And sometimes your friend is actually the person who's like fully engaged and pushing. And this is true in the industry, right? Like, a lot of people, students who have their first pitch and they're like, oh, they hated it. They asked me all these really hard questions. It's like, no, they liked it,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't ask hard questions when they don't like it. They ask the hard questions when they don't like it. They go, "Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll get back to you." Right? If they really don't like it, they don't need to waste their time asking hard questions. Right? People ask those hard questions because they're going, "I want to make it, but I'm afraid of this," or
Mm-hmm.
"I'm wondering if she has an answer for that," or "But what about this?" Right? So sometimes those objections, right, are actually a sign that people are interested, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to ask yourself, like, where's the objection coming from, right?
Yeah.
Is it coming from love, or is it coming to knock me down?
I always say it's like, for people when people like bring up problems, if they're sticking around to solve them with you, that's different than someone who's just dumping on something and leaving, right?
Yeah, I love
Um,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I would love to ask you just one more question,
Oh, sure.
because you're such an expert on the festival world
Mm-hmm.
and how that works and how to get in and how to build those relationships. And I know it's not our main topic. Maybe we'll do another one where we really talk about how to work festivals. But if there was one piece of advice that you had for filmmakers who want to get into festivals or want to use the festival world to help build their career, what would that one piece of advice be?
Figure out which festivals you can actually watch the stuff that's coming out of there, or read the stuff that's coming out of there, and consume it so that you have an idea of what's being programmed. I don't know how many submissions Sundance got this year, but they got 14,000 last year and they took 200. Features were statistically easier to get into than shorter projects. So we're talking like under like a percent. um, It's really competitive. And even on the level of Salute Your Shorts, which is an event that I run, we're taking about 4%, which is one out of every 25 projects that are sent our way. So knowing that it's very competitive, it really behooves you to realize that having something that works, having something that's good, doesn't guarantee anything. You have to have something that really lingers with people when they're watching thousands of submissions. Because like at a big festival like Sundance, where they work year round, a single programmer might watch 1,000 projects, and they might get to get one or two of theirs in. So there is a sense that these projects linger. We at Salute Your Shorts, we say our mantra is films with aftertaste. That taste doesn't always have to be good. Not every film feels good. There's films that feel like shit.
Yes.
There's films that make you scared. But the idea is a tongue is a palate. We have a palate for films. Which films are lingering? Which films are sticking with us? I believe that in order to have a career, you don't have to appeal to everyone, but you have to linger. And with certain people, they will like that taste, and they will be the people that consume your art. But if you have a strong aftertaste, most people will at least be talking about your art on some level. They'll be aware of who you are. They'll know, oh, so-and-so, well, she does body horror, so I don't watch that, but like I've heard of her, you know? Oh, she does comedy. I'm more of a drama person, but like, yeah, I've heard of her. Watch the things that are coming out of Sundance. Hey, buy a ticket to see Chasers online.
Yeah.
But watch things that come out of like South by Southwest, Locarno, go to Palm Springs Short Fest, go to Tribeca, go to like, I don't know if Claremont-Ferrand is an online library, but like anywhere you can, like the big places, watch the stuff, consume the stuff, and then ask like, what's sticking with me? I think you'll notice that at these really big events that are like, you know, quote, the tastemaker events, a lot of this stuff is really powerful. It sticks with you, even if you don't like it. There'll be something about it that's memorable. And so your job as a storyteller is to find, yes, you are improving your craft, and that is part of it. And that is a journey. And like 10 years ago, I was not prepared for the opportunities that I have today. And that's just the sucky part of growth, is that you got to do the growth. But if you'll get there a lot faster if you start finding ways to stand out. And you can only do that you only do that well if you're doing it authentically. And it's a lot easier to do it authentically if you see kind of what is all out there, and then get inspired by, you know, you'll inevitably be inspired by some of the amazing things you've seen that'll help you think outside of the box, but still using these tools that we've been talking about today.
Yeah. And that concept of being disruptive, right? And it's why so much of screenwriting education pushes people the exact opposite direction, right?
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning of your career. You know, you're a famous writer and you want to follow the formula. You know, it's not a lot of fun, but you might get away with it. You might make some money doing it.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of your career, your work just needs to be disruptive, right? What you call the aftertaste. It's got to leave us with an aftertaste. It's
like, oh, remember that one that I was at the panel for, I was at Deadline's Contenders panel the other day, and Saturday night, Jason Reitman was saying that they numbered the script pages backwards. This is just like a small little thing, but because it was in real time leading up to the first SNL show, they were like, let's start with 99 and work our way to 1. And they said like people would read it. Once they figured out what was going on, it made the momentum grow. So there's an example of like something just on the script level alone being disruptive, that someone would talk about it. Someone would remember how that script, they actually went down to 1 rather than up to 99. How cool is that? We knew how many pages were left before the end. We knew we were getting close to the end. That's an example of like something that's disruptive.
Yeah. And I love, because what you're really talking about again is theme, right? They didn't do it as a gimmick. Because if you try to build a disruptive gimmick into your script, it ain't happening, right?
No.
It's just not going to work.
Feels random.
Yeah, exactly. And or it feels, you know, like the kid who bakes everybody cookies because he wants to be liked, right? And still doesn't get invited to the party because you can feel him trying to be liked rather than just being himself.
Yes.
And, you know, the disruptive thing is actually you. You're the disruptive thing. Right? Because you, like every other person in the world, underneath the mask that you're wearing, if you can build the skills to take that mask off, you're weird, right? and you have something to say that's different, right? Erin's crazy. She wants to do a freaking oneer, right? With no money, right? Like, right? And that's her, right? That's her. She's just incredibly bold, right? And a different person might have a completely different thing that makes them wonderfully weird, right? And so it's about following the things that you love, right? And forcing yourself to explore your theme and push your script, not to disrupt them, but rather to disrupt your own expectations, where you're like, holy crap, I just wrote something that took me beyond where I expected to go. Well, that's a disruptive script. That's a script that's going to linger. And then I love what you're saying about, like, hey, especially if you can't afford to apply everywhere, going like, well, which of these festivals does my work really fit?
Yes. And you'll get the sense of that. So for instance, I didn't submit Chasers to Austin. And if I don't get into South by, I will. But Austin has played my work twice in the past. Austin is like the Screenwriters Festival. And the last two projects I had before this were really like, the script was probably the element of them that shined the most. And those scripts were written by other people. I helped develop them, but they were written by other people and I directed them. I knew that with the filmmaking, like with that, I knew that the filmmaking would feel more front and center, even though I'm very proud of the script of Chasers. And so I said, I'm going to go for South by Southwest before I go for Austin. Whereas in the last two projects, I submitted to Austin first, hadn't even submitted to South by. Yeah. So that's just me kind of like having consumed material that came out of those festivals. And, you can also work with strategists if you want to get this information, but you can do it for free by just like paying attention. A lot of the films that come out of these festivals, they are eventually online anyways. So you could look at someone's lineup and then just start Googling those shorts. A lot of them are online already, okay? You can find them for free. Go to short. Also, this is one actionable thing. Start subscribing to Short of the Week and then also watch Vimeo staff picks. Short of the Week is going to probably have, I'm speaking in broad generalities and I have friends that work for these that might be like, Erin, you got us wrong. But my take is that Short of the Week is going to be stuff that like is just like really impactful stories, not told traditionally, but like more traditionally than what I'm seeing on a lot of the Vimeo staff pick. I think Vimeo staff pick like might be like the slightly more auteur brother of Short of the Week, slightly more commercial, but both of them definitely are filmmaker forward and looking for things that are like disruptive in certain ways. And those things are free. You can watch those. Amaletto also has a lot of like high concept stuff if you're curious, or if you really like genre stuff, look at Dust and Alter. These are all successful short projects that had successful festival runs and then are getting picked up by these distributors. So they're like, if you're making your first film, getting on one of these platforms is a really big like first, like that's pat yourself on the back. Like that's great.
This has been such an incredible episode. There's so much wonderful, actionable stuff that you share with our students. So welcome to our faculty. It's so exciting. Erin came up as a student, and it's so exciting, like for you to be now teaching for us and part of our faculty and having so much tremendous success in your career. I would love to talk a little bit about what studying with you looks like at the school.
Sure. Well, I'm doing pro track with people, but also, you and I are hoping to put some classes together on making movies. When I'm working with the students I've gotten to work with so far through workshops or pro track, one thing that I have a lot of background in is comedy. I'm not exclusively working with comedy by any means. And if you like connect with things I say, please come to me regardless. But I love adding comedy as like a decoration to a drama, if that makes sense. My work has gotten more and more dramatic over the years, and Chasers is a drama, but it's like funny till it's not. I think that's indicative of like my desire to make dialogue really idiosyncratic, really character specific. I don't know if you know the term triple bumper theory. You bump the dialogue 3 times to get it more and more subtextual. If this is true, what else is true? What are they thinking while they say this? So I love really helping students do that, but I also love like really just connecting with, all right, what are you like, what do you care about the most in this script? What is the thing that no matter what we can't lose? And it could be a character, it could be the theme, it could be the location, and really starting with there and then igniting possibilities, and then seeing like, where does our energy take us? Because I think screenwriting, when it's going really well, feels really instinctual. It feels like you just know, you're like, oh, that's right, this is the right, this flows, this feels good. So I'm trying to help people tap into what feels really right for them, and also give them feedback as it's appropriate to how I think their work will be received by different types of gatekeepers, because depending on what your goals are, you might want a different type of script. So I have I have my work that I'm doing in the studio system, and then I have my work that I'm doing independently. And the kind of thing that I'm writing for myself on spec for independent production is very different than the kind of thing I'm writing for studio. So I also like to try to figure out, like, what is the path for this student? To be fair, I think everyone should at least produce something independently. I think it's worth doing. But that doesn't mean that you don't have your big, like, your thing that you're going to try to sell, or the thing that that you want to make 10 years from now while you're working on this other thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what ProTrack is our one-on-one mentorship program. So as part of ProTrack, you get to meet with Erin one-on-one every week or every other week. You work through your draft 10 pages at a time. Every time you finish a draft, Erin's going to read it and give you feedback on the full structure of the piece. And then what's really cool is you can just build a library of scripts with Erin if you're primarily a screenwriter. But if you're in the place where you're interested in directing or producing or starring or distributing or all of the above, you can start to shift your sessions as you go into production or pre-production or fundraising, right? To actually go, okay, we got the script. Now, how do we get it made? Right? And how do we get it cast? And what should I be doing now? Right? And so it gives you the ability to have somebody in your corner with a vast level of experience, right? Not only working for studios, but working on this super low budget, right? I don't have a single dollar, and I got to figure out how to raise enough money to make this movie. It's just an extraordinary opportunity to do that with someone of Erin's. You guys have heard it, right? Her talent and I'm making her blush, but just the precision of her guidance is so incredible. And then workshops, so if you prefer to learn in a group, workshops just ProTrack in a group, and you can use it exactly in the same way. And we're going to have a lot of other cool stuff coming in 2025 with Erin. So, Erin, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
I run an event called Salute Your Shorts every August, and we show amazing shorts from all over the world. Come hang with me August 15th through 17th. Put it in your calendar now. That way there's no excuse 8 months from now when tickets go on sale. So come on out and see the kind of stuff that me and my team are gravitating to when we are going through thousands and thousands of submissions. Here's the last thing I'll say. I always like to say you are what you eat. And that doesn't just apply to like food, which it does. I think artists should take care of themselves, but it also applies to the way we consume media. And just be mindful that your goals, your consuming habits as a viewer should line up with your goals. So if you are hired to write a rather commercial made-for-TV movie, you should be watching some of those so that you know to a degree what they want. But if your goal is to write the next season of something like a White Lotus, you don't say that and not watch White Lotus. And and this might seem very obvious, but I say that because I know a number of people who come to LA and say, I'm going to get into Sundance, and they've never watched a short film that came out of Sundance. So make sure that you're consuming in line with your current goals. And those, you can be like me and have way too many goals, but be able to prioritize them and prioritize your viewing in such a way that aligns with them.
That is a beautiful place to end. You are what you eat. I love it. Erin, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and welcome to the team.
Thank you.